Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Red Gaming Tech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully, you're having an amazing day. We have a couple of interesting things to get through today, saying the least, but I would like to start things out with a quick plug, and that is that Matt Hargett, perhaps better known as Psych, as well as NX Gamer, also known as Michael, and I recently recorded a podcast, actually uploading it today, and it's going to be discussing the Nintendo Switch, it's going to be discussing cloud gaming, gaming in general, and some other stuff. It was actually really fun for me, because Psych is obviously a former PlayStation employee, now working at Roblox, and NXG is obviously another YouTuber. So I got to, essentially, I could have agreed with those guys prior to the video being recorded, that I would be kind of taking a question role. So essentially I would be asking some silly questions and some technical questions and basically trying to poke the conversation along and letting those guys do most of the talking, because I kind of figured that it would be good to get different perspectives on the channel for something. So I thought that was kind of fun. And the other thing as well is that Matt and Michael have basically said that they would like to come back again, and we're looking to get a different guest on. So it was really fun for me to do that. It was really cool. So I'd encourage you to check it out if you're interested in either of those topics. But let's move on real quick to the PlayStation 5. This is going to be a quick PS5 piece of news, and that is that Jace Skell, and you may be familiar with this name by now, he is pretty synonymous with PlayStation 5 leaks. He claims to be a former employee of Sony Pictures, but ultimately, of course, this information could still be incorrect. But he says, sorry not to tweet this earlier. From what I got, it was supposed to be shown instead of the Epic Games PS5 Unreal demo months ago. So this may be another demo to reveal the PS5's ray tracing capabilities. This is essentially kind of something where there was originally supposed to be a demo shown prior to the Unreal Engine demo, which obviously looked pretty damn amazing. I've done a full breakdown of the UE5 demo, which is of course the Lumen demo. And prior to that, it seems like there was supposed to be a different demo shown, which was to highlight the ray tracing capabilities of the PS5. Instead, this demo got showed off. Now, why is that? Honestly, who the hell knows? It could just be a business decision. Epic, for example, could have lobbied Sony to do this, and this stuff happens all of the time. It really does. Another possibility is that Sony just felt, and I personally believe this is much more likely, that it fit in with the narrative much better, especially because Unreal Engine is so synonymous with gaming. Let's just be honest. And honestly, as well, the Lumen demo looked pretty damn interesting. I mean, I think it looked fantastic, the Lumen demo. Even though it doesn't have, like, real ray tracing, it's, real-time global illumination, but I still think it looks pretty damn interesting. I'll also quickly point out that well, one of the early leaks I got for the PlayStation 5 was that there were internal demos of hardware-based ray tracing being added to existing PS4 titles. One of the titles I heard receive this treatment was God of War. I don't know if it was the entire game or whether it was just vertical slices or let's say the first 30 minutes of gameplay or whatever. That's what I got told, and these demos were shown off to other studios, so not Sony internal studios, but just for example, I'm not saying it was, but the likes of Ubisoft. Anyhow, from a quick piece of PlayStation news, I want to tackle tons of Nvidia stuff, as well as Nintendo Switch stuff. So first things first, the user by the name of Leakbench has decided to, leak the performance information as well as some information of the release date for Ampere. They are stating that it will be the 2109, so roughly a month from now, that we see the Founders Edition cards launch, and then AIB cards will launch essentially a week after that, so 2809. And apparently it's going to be a 35% performance increase. So we can assume that that would be from one tier to the other. So for example, the 3080 from the 2080 or what have you. I would stress that we don't know if this is the average over several games or whatever, or B, whether this is, let's say for the sake of argument, Firestrike, or whether this is one specific game which doesn't lend itself so well, and we also don't know things like, well, resolution, as well as other things like, I don't know, ray tracing performance and DLSS performance and all this other stuff. Now you may say, well, I want to just run, my games with ray tracing off, and I 100% understand that that's a good perspective. But let's say that Nvidia double ray tracing performance with Ampere. I'm not saying they have, but let's just say they did. Then it may be that you could even run real-time ray tracing without even DLSS. So I'm just saying that these figures, they're great, but we don't have enough insight, at least as of the time I'm seeing this, to really get an idea of how they stack up against the other cards. And other leaks have pointed to a faster performance increase. Some are pointing up to a 50% performance increase. Others are saying that the 3070 is basically the equivalent of the 2080 Ti. In fact, Moore's Law is dead, just recently stated that on Twitter. So ultimately, things are still up in the air, and it's also interesting because I wonder, these benchmarks, what is the state of the drivers? Because let's say, for sake of argument, these tests were, I don't know, from an AIB that these results came in. What if they're just early drivers and a new driver update increases performance by another 5 or 10%? Again, I'm not defending these results, but they could even be lower than this. But what is really cool is we actually finally have a die shot of the GA102. It's the GA102-300. Of course, this is the GPU which we'll see inside of the RTX 3090, and it's frankly ridiculous 24 gigabytes. I can't believe I'm saying 24 gigabytes for a GPU. I'm sorry, but that I know I've said this a few times before in videos, but it's so bloody bizarre to me that we're seeing 24 gigs of RAM. Anyway, so this die is said to have a 630 mm², well, 627 if you want me to be precise. And it's, well, pretty damn big. It's said to feature 5248 CUDA cores, and it is the flagship model. There is some debate whether it's a replacement for the Titan or whether it's a replacement for the 2080 Ti, which obviously there is quite a difference in pricing there. Some people are speculating that we will see the 3080 and then later on the 3080 Ti. Honestly, I think this is likely given the price disparity between the 3080 and the 3090, as I've covered just recently. You can see the code name in this particular thing, and it looks like it's a qualification sample. This means that it's basically, the best way of describing it is not engineering sample, but a sample that they can provide to the likes of MSI and Zotac and whomever else who wants to create a board specifically around this series. And speaking of MSI, that was a nice segue, wasn't it? We actually have a total of 29 different SKUs which have been submitted to the EEC, and this is thanks to PC Gamer, so credit to them. And this is from MSI, who have submitted all of these. Just as a quick reminder, the EEC is the Euro-Asian Economic Commission, and there are a ridiculous number of these GPUs. There are 14 different V388 models, and there's also 4 390 models, and then of course the remaining 11 are the V389s. Logically, those names would probably represent the SKUs of the 3070, 80 and 90, but of course I don't know that 100%. For all we know, it could be the reverse. This basically means that at this point, the SKUs are, at the very least, being created by these companies. As of the time that I've spoken to a couple of sources in the UK working at AIBs, they've still not been briefed by Nvidia, at least the UK divisions, but it's possible that US divisions are different. But I'm really hyped for the next generation of cards from both AMD and Nvidia. I think it's not that, you know, the 3090 or whatever is necessarily, you know, something that everyone needs. If you're only playing at like 1440p or whatever else, then let's face it, a 2080 Super or a RX 5700 XT or whatever you've got is still going to be pretty damn good. But if you are trying to push 4K, I think new end cards are going to be really impressive. Anyway, and finally, I want to discuss the Switch Pro, because Takashi Mushizuki, hopefully I've pronounced that correctly, I probably butchered that last name, they've actually revealed that there is a new Nintendo Switch model, and it probably will be supporting 4K resolution. And this is courtesy of a Bloomberg report. Now, this reporter has actually been pretty accurate with previous Nintendo information way before its official announcement. They've said that the specs of the machine have yet to be finalized, but they are trying to include enough performance for 4K high-definition graphics, and this is something that they've not really delved into in terms of the specifications, but furthermore, there will also be new games as well, which will be announced from Nintendo, and it looks like this is going to happen next year. Now, there's a couple of reasons that this is actually very interesting to me. One, I actually predated this with my own exclusive that Nintendo were working on a new Switch, and I said that I believe it was a Switch Pro. I don't think it was an entire new console with backwards compatibility. I said that I believe it was a Switch Pro, but there was a Switch hardware revision which was being tested this year, and then previous year, late last year, there was also a different set of hardware, and I believe that the chipsets themselves were different, and they actually fixed quite a lot of issues with the Switch. At least that's what my source told me. So, I think one of the logical ways that Nintendo can do this is to use something like a Volta or perhaps even a slightly later architecture, basically just add in, I don't think they're going to have ray tracing, just to be clear, but if they add in tensor cores, which the Volta architecture does, the Volta Tegra, which the name eludes me offhand, they could basically run DLSS, and then for handheld mode, it could be rendering natively at 540 and then upsample, but for docked mode, it could be rendering at 1080p, and it's got, of course, those additional CUDA cores as well, with higher clock frequencies, more memory bandwidth, blah, 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 blah. It's rendering at 1080p, and then it upsamples to, let's say, up to 4K. I suspect not all games may do this. For example, Nintendo developers may choose to just say, well, you know what, we're going to be targeting 720p native, but we're going to upsample to, let's say, 1440p, which would still be pretty damn nice. Or they could go, of course, with some interim resolution, like, I don't know, 1600p or whatever they wanted to do. But yeah, it could be really cool as a console. As I said, I have covered this previously, so I'll try to remember to link it in the video description. If not, you can check the website or on the channel, and I have covered that. And it also works very well because, as I mentioned earlier, Matt and NXG and myself were discussing the possibility of a new Nintendo console. But with that said, thank you very much for watching the video, take care of yourselves, and bye for now.